In the meantime, the highest-ranking politician to be detained by the tribunal, the leader of the interim government of Rwanda in 1994, former Prime Minister Jean Kambanda, admitted his responsibility in the genocide at his initial appearance in open court.
In the evening of the 8th of April 1994, a jeep, an army jeep with soldiers, fetched him from his house, took him to the École Supérieure Militaire, where he was told by top brass of the military that he was nominated Prime Minister. The accused was trapped and was made a puppet, a marionette. Upon his arrest in Nairobi, Kenya, the accused confessed his guilt and decided to plead guilty before any tribunal.
It's the 1st of May 1998, and the media and public came in large numbers.
It was then that he felt at ease and free. The incubus had been lifted and sent away.
On 29th of February 1998, a few months earlier, the former commander of the United Nations Assistance Mission in Rwanda, the Canadian General Romeo Dallaire, testified before Trial Chamber 1. His testimony still remains one of the high points in the history of the tribunal.
It has always been very easy to accuse the United Nations of not having intervened, but the United Nations is not a sovereign country. All of us make up the United Nations.
During the press conference that followed, the general recalled his experience. "I know that God exists because I met the devil." A few months later, on 6th of May 1998, a large crowd attended the visit to the tribunal made by the United Nations Secretary General, Kofi Annan. During his visit, the Secretary General expressed his personal support for measures to accelerate the work of the tribunal towards the fulfillment of its mandate.
Trial Chamber 1 is in session today to pronounce sentence in the matter of the prosecutor against Jean Kambanda.
Jean Kambanda acknowledges that following numerous meetings of the Council of Ministers between 8 April 1994 and 17 July 1994, he as Prime Minister instigated, aided and abetted the prefets, bookmaster and members of the population to commit massacres and killings of civilians, in particular Tutsi and moderate Hutu. Count 9. Jean Kambanda acknowledges that on 3 May 1994, he was personally asked to take steps to protect children who had survived the massacre at the hospital, and he failed to act. On the same day after the meeting, the children were killed. He acknowledges that he failed in his duty to ensure the safety of the children and of the population of Rwanda. Count 10. Jean Kambanda admits that in his particular role of making public commitments on behalf of the government, he addressed public meetings and the media at various places in Rwanda, directly and publicly inciting the population to commit acts of violence against Tutsi and moderate Hutu. He acknowledges uttering the incendiary phrase that was repeatedly broadcast, quote, "You refuse to give your blood to your country, and the dogs drink it for nothing," unquote. I now call on Jean Kambanda to stand up and to hear this sentence.
La Chambre de première instance
Trial Chamber 1
condamne Jean Kambanda.
Sentences Jean Kambanda, born on 19 October 1955 in Gishamfu, Commune, Butare Prefecture, Rwanda, to life imprisonment.
Il en est ainsi décidé.
It is so decided.
Demande
Jean Kambanda
à Jean Kambanda de se retirer.
may now leave the court. The proceedings are adjourned.
L'audience est levée.
All rise.
He later retracted his confession and appealed against the judgment.
La Chambre d'appel, siégeant en audience publique,
The appeals chamber, sitting in open session, unanimously dismisses the 8 grounds of appeal lodged against the judgment of 4 September 1998 by Trial Chamber 1, confirms Jean Kambanda's guilt on all the counts, confirms the sentence of life imprisonment. The hearing is closed.
L'audience est levée.
Veuillez vous lever. All rise.
On 19th of October 2000, Jean Kambanda made history as the first head of government to be sentenced for crimes of genocide.
We also discussed our ongoing activities in
For the prosecutor of the 2 international tribunals, Louise Arbour of Canada, and her deputy Bernard Mouna from Cameroon, that was a marked accomplishment. For the first time in history, an international court had received the confession of a head of government and convicted him. Arusha became the subject of world attention. For Arbour and Mouna, there had been other successes. Sometime earlier, they had brought off a masterstroke. On the 18th of July 1997 in Nairobi, with the help of the Kenyan authorities, they had succeeded in arresting many of the high-ranking officials of the former regime, including Jean Kambanda himself. Most of the construction work that had been undertaken was completed by 1999. Now, not just 1, but 3 ultra-modern courtrooms are ready. A state-of-the-art law library welcomed its first users, and a fully equipped press room is at the disposal of journalists.
Plaidez-vous coupable ou non coupable?
Je plaide non coupable, Monsieur le Président.
Non coupable, votre honneur.
Je plaiderai non coupable puisque ce sont des pires mensonges, Monsieur le Président.
Despite Jean Kambanda's confession, former ministers of his government and certain high-ranking officials of that regime protested, and still protest, their innocence. It was a former leader of the Interahamwe militia, Omar Serushago, who broke the trend. At his initial appearance, he surprised everyone by pleading guilty. His confession earned him the leniency of the judges.
Premièrement, l'appel est rejeté.
First of all, the appeal is dismissed. Secondly, the sentence handed down on 5 February 1999 by Trial Chamber 1 is confirmed.
Confirmé.
He was sentenced to 15 years imprisonment. In September 1999, after 3 years spent pursuing those responsible for the Rwandan genocide and the former Yugoslavian war criminals, Louise Arbour resigned as prosecutor, having been called to the bench of the Canadian Supreme Court. In 1996, she had succeeded the South African judge Richard Goldstone, first prosecutor of the 2 United Nations ad hoc tribunals. The Security Council then appointed Carla Del Ponte, a Swiss national, to succeed Mrs. Arbour. Together, Bernard Mouna and Carla Del Ponte sought and obtained the joinder of all accused persons implicated in crimes committed together in a series of joint trials. That strategy of joining several cases was designed to enable the Office of the Prosecutor to establish that there had been a long-standing conspiracy on the part of the accused to commit the genocide.
Naturally, that's not the miracle solution, but in any case, it's a means of expediting the proceedings. Furthermore, if the charges are based on the same facts, it's really more appropriate that all the accused should be jointly tried.
Since the tribunal's inception, its relations with the government of Rwanda have not always been ideal. The Rwandan authorities blow hot and cold. On the negative side, the criticisms of Ibuka, an association of genocide survivors, and AVEGA, the Association of Genocide Widows, are among the most severe.
When one is very keen to defend victims, one may sometimes not understand certain situations, and I am referring here to the situation of witness victims who appeared, and in the end there were allegations of ill treatment, allegations which the registrar is investigating and will continue to investigate.
I think that is inherent in the system. If it were a civil law system with an examining magistrate, there would have been a neutral person in the middle who would compare what the witness is saying to what he really did. There would have been rogatory commissions where there would have been some form of verification. At this tribunal, you are told that each party brings its own witnesses, so you haven't the slightest clue whether the witness is telling the truth or lying through his teeth, as is sometimes the case. We are therefore forced to do the job the examining magistrate would have done in our system, and we are forced to push the witnesses. At any rate, when our witnesses testify, the prosecutor subjects them to the same treatment.
The procedure and conduct of trials are designed and organized as if the proceedings were between the international community and the accused persons. No place, voice, or representation is given to the victim. It is absolutely normal that after the observations we have been making since the creation of the tribunal, the results obtained have shown that the absence of a place for the victim is a serious drawback.
I believe that if there are any trials where victims need to be represented, it is indeed the trials we are conducting here. Trials involving genocide and crimes against humanity. And I believe that the fact that they are not represented is a flaw, a major flaw in international justice.
In a criminal case, it's a prosecutor who represents the interests of the victims, because they are his witnesses. So whether it's witnesses for the prosecution or witnesses for the defense, they're all victims. They've all suffered in one way or another. They've lost families. The court has to protect the rights of all these victims, of all these witnesses. And to do so, the tribunal has the witness and victims protection services. One section for prosecution witnesses, one for defense witnesses.
Je suis très sensible au sort I am very concerned about the fate of genocide victims, and it is regrettable that during the adoption of the statute for the creation of the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, the Security Council did not make specific provision for the role and place of victims within this tribunal. The Treaty of Rome that set up the International Criminal Court has certainly corrected the situation. But all we can do is provide additional resources to assist the victims, even if it is only by way of compensation. And, as you are no doubt aware, even that does not fall within the tribunal's jurisdiction.
The appeals chamber of the International Criminal Tribunal.
The low point in the lukewarm relationship between the Rwandan authorities and the tribunal came when the appeals chamber decided that Jean Bosco Barriaguiza had been unlawfully detained for 18 months in Cameroon before his transfer to Arusha and should be released. Barriaguiza was the former director of political affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Rwanda and one of the founders of the Radio-Télévision Libre des Mille Collines. The newly appointed prosecutor, Carla Del Ponte, requested a review of the judgment.
I had
been the prosecutor for this tribunal for a little over 2 months when the Barriaguiza decision landed on my desk. Let us be clear, acquitting an accused because of formal or procedural defects or for abuse of process is actually provided for. But to forbid a prosecutor from prosecuting was something new to me. Your Honors, the prosecutor is humbly asking you to reverse that decision.